I want to talk about episode 2 of The Mandalorian, which I watched on Friday night. And I have to say, if you're not watching it, go watch it. Okay, so spoilers. Just don't mind there being some spoilers in here because there's some stuff we need to talk about. I want to start by talking about the expanded universe. So when Disney took over, they wiped out the original expanded universe. And it was wonderful, the expanded universe. I have so many books from the expanded universe that no longer exist. The Jedi Academy trilogy, which was fantastic. Kip Duran was such a well-rounded character. Anakin Solo was a very well-rounded character. Jason and Jaina were excellent. And all of them got wiped out when Disney took over and said, yeah, we're going to wipe out that expanded universe. Now, since they took over, they brought in Thrawn. Thrawn was in the original expanded universe and now is back in the expanded universe and was in Rebels, right? Yeah. So, pretty awesome to see him back in Star Wars lore. And of course, pretty quickly Disney realized, hey, that Darth Maul guy, he shouldn't be dead. And so they brought in extra adventures with him before they killed him off later on. But still, they realized there are some parts of Star Wars that we can, definitely make work. Cloning. Cloning's a big one. So we go back to Mandalorian here. And it is obvious to me now, after having watched episode 2, as much as I wanted to say, well, we don't know for sure that it's Yoda. It's Yoda. It's Yoda. 50 years of age and still basically a toddler. It's Yoda. And it might be the cutest thing that Disney's invented ever, being Baby Yoda. I really enjoyed it. And what works is that it's cute. And there's always been cute characters in all Star Wars movies. So when people say, oh, is Disney just making it all cute? Sort of like the Porgs in The Last Jedi. The Porgs might have been the highlight of The Last Jedi. But the reality is, there's always been a character that's kind of there for cuteness reasons. Looking back to the Ewoks, even in Empire and Star Wars, you can find little bit characters here and there, little bit creatures that you go, yeah, it's kind of cute. Even Yoda himself, the way that he was introduced in Empire, and the way that he's beaten on R2 with the stick. It's all done for cuteness reasons and for little kids. So there's always been a little kid aspect to Star Wars. The difference is, for those of us who watched it as little kids, we didn't really think we were being pandered to. And the reality was, of course we were. And now we're watching it 40 years later. We're going, this is pandering. It's always been pandering. This is kind of the Star Wars universe, Star Trek to some extent too. But always been that. So where does this go is the big question. Well, we know the Mandalorian's not Boba Fett because he told us. I think it's pretty obvious too from the first 2 episodes. The first one was kind of maybe after Jedi, maybe he got out. And this comes back to the expanded universe thing. Boba Fett wasn't dead in the expanded universe. He actually shot or dug his way out of the Sarlacc creature. And the idea of him escaping the Sarlacc creature makes Boba Fett pretty badass. And for Boba Fett, he had a really undignified way of going in that his rocket pack just gets hit by a stick, basically. And it goes off and he flings into the side of the skiff. And then he falls into the Sarlacc pit. And in Empire, he didn't really do anything. He just took Han. So we haven't really seen Boba Fett being a badass. He looks badass. So the idea that Boba Fett could be back, again, in the original expanded universe, he did come back. And now in this one, I still think that while we have a Mandalorian character, I'm trying to remember his name, but it's something that I'd never heard of before, so it doesn't really matter. Well, we have this new character. You could see Boba Fett, and here's how. So you got this new character, and he's got this massive bounty that he's trying to collect on bringing in Baby Yoda. He's not going to bring Baby Yoda to the remnants of the Empire, which is about to become the First Order, because they don't have good plans for Baby Yoda. So if he decides to skip out on it and says, nah, I'm not going to do that, what's to stop the Empire from finding Boba Fett and having Boba Fett go after this Mandalorian character? So that's where I could see things ending up. This is supposed to be an 8-part series. The 8th part would come out pretty much at the same time as the new movie, which can't be a coincidence. Even though this is set well before the Last Jedi, well before the next movie, The Rise of Skywalker, well before all that takes place, I can't see the timing of this series coming out and the next movie coming out being a coincidence. I just can't. I really, really enjoy what they're doing. I think it's been fascinating to watch. The fight he had with it looked like a furry version of one of the monsters from Attack of the Clones that they fight in the Colosseum. And the fact that he didn't win the fight and that his armor was pretty damaged. Yvonne said to me, she goes, wow, his armor's really damaged. I said, it's basically destroyed. The fact he would have died there and that Baby Yoda saved him is fantastic. And I thought the Jawa fight was interesting. If you were watching, you could see that Yoda didn't really like what was going on there. I'm not going to pretend that that green creature isn't Yoda. And I don't know how long we're going to see a debate about, well, is it Yoda? Yeah, it's Yoda. The fact that he's so strong with the Force, it's Yoda. And the idea being something simple. Now, there's a theory out there that Anakin Skywalker is born and this baby Yoda is born not being Yoda. So in this theory, it's not Yoda. That Anakin was meant to become Darth Vader and this baby Yoda was meant to become the counter to Anakin. So when Anakin was conceived by the Force, by likely Palpatine, that Baby Yoda was born conceived of the Force by Yoda? Again, so this is where it gets kind of weird. I do think it's Yoda. We've had cloners in this series before. We had Kamino, the planet of cloners, right, in Attack of the Clones. What's to say that when Cypher Diaz was there, he didn't have DNA from Yoda, and they couldn't have cloned themselves up a Yoda while they were at it. Clones have been used throughout Star Wars. There were evil clones in the Clone Wars in the original expanded universe that Jedis, in order to, well, Jedi, I guess when you pluralize them, you don't have to say Jedis. Depends on who's saying it, though. When the Jedi initially were threatened, and they realized that the Republic was fracturing, they created clones of themselves to try to hold everything together. Problem was those clones kind of crazy and evil. So you end up with a situation where in the expanded universe originally, Luke had to fight a clone of himself. You had a clone of an old Jedi who was working with Thrawn. Clones have been used throughout Star Wars. So when I start seeing all these people saying, oh, this is just lazy writing, clones. Yeah, clones existed throughout the expanded universe. For the same reason that we're watching this series intently, you don't want to see characters gone forever. And a good example of this, comic books. How many times have we seen a comic book cover, Superman's dead, Batman's dead, that's it, Spider-Man's missing, presumed dead, Flash is missing, presumed dead. They always come back. Always. There's no such thing as a superhero's dead and never comes back. Now, some people are going to say, hey, remember when that character was dead? Right. But eventually somebody else will take up the mantle, whether it's Captain America, Captain Marvel, Spider-Man, Batman, whatever it is. Somebody else will take that place so that that character's back out there, just it's a new name when they're not in the costume. But it's still the same character. Essentially. They'll change the suit, they'll change the look. It's done to sell comic books. So what Disney's doing with Star Wars, if this turns out to be a cloning issue, they're just saying, you know what, we know what sells, we know what works, and we're following the comic book industry in this because it works. It's worked for decades. I think it's fantastic. I think The Mandalorian's a great show. One of the most interesting I've seen. He was fighting with other bounty hunters, and I want to say they resembled Bosk. Bosk was in Empire. I don't know if they're the same race, but it's very, very interesting to watch as this underbelly of Star Wars is kind of probed and looked at. And there's no lightsaber battles. You don't need lightsaber battles for it to be Star Wars. This is something that I think George Lucas got when he made the first trilogy, and then when he made the prequels, way too many lightsabers. Oh, way too many. Just so many lightsabers. And then you just see Jedi getting mowed down in Attack of the Clones, and then again in Revenge of the Sith. And it made Jedi look like they were kind of a joke. Now, what The Mandalorian does is it builds up your bounty hunter. It builds up the idea that the Force is kind of handy to have in the situation where you might die. And hopefully it builds the Jedi back up. So they feel mythical again. And not just like a whole crap ton of extras running around with lightsabers. Make it feel special and make it feel like it's important. Make it feel like they're mythical beings in this universe. Star Wars is still my favorite franchise, and I have to say The Mandalorian, through its first 2 episodes and with Baby Yoda, has reminded me why I absolutely loved Star Wars when I was a kid. Why the original trilogy was so beloved by me that I choked down Phantom Menace in the theater 3 times when it came out. And it wasn't until about that 3rd viewing, and then as I went along, I was like, okay, I can't forgive this. And then Attack of the Clones came out, and I was sort of like, oh, God, it's robots against clones. I don't care. And that's the biggest problem I had, was that by the time Revenge of the Sith rolled around, I just didn't really care. Everything was so clean. Everything was so sanitized. Everything was so choreographed. Everything was so plotted out that it just didn't feel like there was any real danger. It didn't feel like there was anything on the line. You have a battle at the end of Revenge of the Sith that took 35 minutes. It should have taken 5. And it really should have been a passionate battle. Angry. There should have been a whole bunch of words exchanged, and there really kind of sort of wasn't. It went on for way too long, and it was just sort of a, hey, look how much money we can throw into special effects. There's rivers of molten lava. Yeah, all right. Can we get to the end of this, please? And you should never feel that way during a battle scene in a movie. So in this one, in this show, I think it shows that Disney's serious about taking this in a better direction. I don't think Last Jedi was a bad movie. I think it was something completely different. I think it opened a door to something else. There's some debate about whether or not Rian Johnson's trilogy is actually going to happen. Because of the reception for Last Jedi. Now, for people who wondered what was with all that gambling planet crap and all this stuff about them selling arms to both sides, that's a gateway to Rian Johnson's trilogy. That's why it feels so out of place with the rest of the movie. Because it is. So when I watched The Last Jedi, when I watched that one now, I skip that. I just skip over that. I just gloss over that. The whole, we need the code breaker and all, I just skip that. I just go, nah, that's not important. It has nothing to do with the plot line. Look, in the end, all it does is just put Finn and Rose in a situation where they're in danger on a Star Destroyer that they never should have been on in the first place. It's a pointless storyline. Everything else in the movie I enjoyed. You could talk about how nothing makes sense with the space battles, but I could point out in all 8 movies of Star Wars how space battles haven't made sense. Circling back to The Mandalorian, I haven't had that problem with The Mandalorian yet. Any battle that I've seen has been really well plotted out without looking overly choreographed, and it's made sense, and you feel like there's actual danger. So, this show's great. I'm really looking forward to seeing where they go with the next episode. I'd be interested to know what you guys think about it, and how this makes you feel about the future of Star Wars. I feel a lot better about the future of Star Wars after watching the first 2 episodes of this than I did before watching it. I had many Star Wars concerns as well about what might happen after Rise of Skywalker and what might happen in Rise of Skywalker. How they could do it all completely wrong, and how they could potentially just play it safe, which could be wrong. Having Yoda in the show, I know there's people who aren't going to like it. I know there's people who are going to say this isn't right, but it's a Star Wars staple going back to the expanded universe before Disney took over. Even the idea of the ultimate doomsday weapon. Yeah, they had a prototype of the Death Star in the Jedi Academy. I've also got another book. I'm trying to remember the name of it now, but they basically had the Hutts creating a super laser that would obliterate a planet too. The idea of just taking the Death Star and just saying, why do we need this giant thing the size of a moon? Let's just make the giant laser and we just blast everything. And so the idea of a doomsday weapon, it's in most Star Wars. Most Star Wars, you'll have that. And again, that goes back to way before Disney took over. And Lucasfilm was in control of where the expanded universe went and had to okay storylines. So while I understand some people saying, oh, if George Lucas was running it, the sequels would have been different. Yep. But there still would have been some relying on old characters as well. There's a reason he went to the prequels. He obviously wanted to flesh out stories of Yoda and Obi-Wan and Anakin before he became Vader, and Palpatine, how he became the Emperor. So everybody's guilty of it. And I'm guilty of enjoying the idea of more Yoda. So let me know what you guys thought of the second episode. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing right through. You just happened upon this video. I'm really, really excited about the next six episodes and how they're going to potentially tie in to Rise of Skywalker. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I'll talk to you again soon.